They had this idea, the Stoics. They really invented the idea of the brotherhood of man. They thought we were all connected because we all have souls, and our souls are all connected through what they called the logos, the kind of divine realm. So we have an obligation to tolerate each other and to try and help each other because we're all brothers and sisters. But you might find you actually think too much about other people or too much about what they think of you. So you're over-concerned with what other people think of you. And they had a strategy for that as well. Alain de Botton called it tactical misanthropy, which is to meditate on how stupid other people are and like how pointless it is to worry about them. So there's, the Stoics are always saying, think for a moment about the people whose opinion you care about. What are their lives like? Why do you care about their opinions? So that can be helpful if you're caring too much about what the general public think about you. They had a technique called shame attacking. This is again the idea that you're over-concerned with what other people think about you, and you're so worried about getting other people's approval that you become very inhibited and shy and kind of closed up. So they had this technique of going and making a fool of yourself in public, intentionally drawing attention to yourself and not caring, so that you overcome this fear of other people laughing at you or ridiculing you. So really, Diogenes the cynic, this guy who lived in a barrel, he was like, anything that I do in private, I should be prepared to do in public. So he refused to kind of divide his public self from his private self. So why shouldn't we just go to the loo in public? Why do we have this silly concerns about what other people do? So that's what he did. In fact, he did everything in public. He made love in public. He slept in public. We can attack this idea of public kind of civility if we're over-refined, over-polite, if it's become, if we've become excessively hindered with ideas of politeness. And then they also had a whole range of training exercises to do with the body. So philosophy wasn't just something to do with our thoughts or our beliefs. It was physical training as well. They actually taught philosophy in the gymnasium. And a lot of their metaphors would come from gymnastics. They said learning to philosophize is like learning to wrestle, so that when life throws a bad experience at us, we know how to wrestle with it, or you can like jiu-jitsu or something. So they had all these, they were actually, nowadays we think of philosophers as very weedy, weak people. I mean, this is why the Monty Python sketch, the philosophy football match is so funny. The ref blows the whistle and all the philosophers just walk around and football. Because we think of them as quite weak people, just like eggheads perhaps, and they couldn't kick a ball to save their life. But in the ancient world, philosophers were the toughest people. They were the strongest people. So Socrates was supposed to be the toughest soldier in the Athenian army. He could endure the most kind of hardship and suffering. Diogenes, he was really physically tough. He could exist, just exposed to the elements, just wearing a cloth, just in summer or winter. Philosophers actually, there was a Stoic philosopher who invented the training that all Spartans underwent, this incredibly horrifically tough training where they would throw Spartan children or men into the wilderness from the age of about 9 and just make them fend for themselves. That was invented by a Stoic. So they had this very kind of tough physical training. And the idea of it was not just to be a jock, not just to become a bodybuilder. The idea was to exert your reason's control over your body, so that you weren't the slave of your physical appetites, so that you didn't have to have, lots of food, so you didn't have to have a beer in the evening, so that the idea of it was to increase your freedom, to increase your autonomy. That was the idea of all these philosophical exercises, to increase your freedom and your resilience. So they were quite stern, the Stoics. They didn't believe in cookbooks, for example. They thought cookbooks were the kind of, the source of sin. They wouldn't have liked Nigella Lawson. They didn't believe in fancy beds. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, still slept on the floor, just on a kind of a rug. They didn't believe in hot baths. Seneca refused to ever have a hot bath, except for when he died, because he slit his wrists when Nero sentenced him to death. But he was so old it took ages for him to bleed to death, so eventually he got in a hot bath and ended up suffocating to death. So the one hot bath he took killed him. So they had some of them were vegetarians. Pythagoras was a vegetarian. because he believed in reincarnation, so he wouldn't eat meat. He wouldn't eat beans either. Had a big thing against beans. So, there was a lot of physical training exercises as well. So those are some of the kind of techniques and strategies that we use that you can use. And I mean, I know, I guess I can just speak at the end about the revival of ancient philosophy. So, I mean, I got into Stoicism myself when I was a teenager. I came across it through CBT, and I did some CBT therapy when I was about 21, and it just seemed very familiar to me. I thought, I think I've come across this before. It reminds me of Marcus Aurelius. So I went and looked into it, and I went and interviewed the guys who invented CBT. And they said, sure enough, yes, we kind of took it from Stoicism, you guys, so they took it from that. And I then kind of gradually through the internet, I got in touch with other people who were into Stoicism around the world. And you'd be surprised, but actually there are kind of Stoics all over the world. There are Stoic, soldiers. There are Stoic cops, politicians, like the mayor of Vancouver is a Stoic, Stoic sports people. And so the internet has really kind of brought these people together. And if you're interested in it, there's a website called New Stoic, which is kind of a community of modern-day Stoics. And we had a conference in California this April, where it wasn't very big, but a few of us got together and discussed how to practice Stoicism. And we're probably going to have another conference next April in London, by the way. So I think more and more people are kind of using these techniques and finding that they're quite useful to our modern, secular, pluralist society, because you can apply them if you believe in God or Allah, or if you don't. So there are people who use these and find these techniques useful who are Christian or Muslim, and there are people who are fiercely atheist, but they still both practice the same kind of exercises or techniques. And they're quite flexible and adaptable. Different types of personalities can tailor different types of exercises. How full-on and intense you are about it is really up to you. So I think a lot of people find it useful. And anyway, I've put some books at the end which discuss some of these ideas and techniques. And my blog is at the bottom as well. And I write about this kind of stuff a lot. So I'll take your questions. Thanks very much.